but welcome all. On behalf of the Holyoke Public Library, Puerto Rican Cultural Project, Grito del Are, Hispanic American Library / Grito del Are, welcome. This is our fourth event that began in 2015 with the controversial author Dennis, and followed by Charles Benatol, then Professor Solcide del Moral, and now this is not a preview. This is a preview, not a premiere. There's some technical issue about that. This is a preview of the event. Juan Falcon, I assume he's coming very soon. However, as good Puerto Rican, we begin late, usually. Hello? This is Puerto Rican time, not American time.
Not on time.
No time. Let's begin the show with Cheo.
Okay, well, I'm going to kill these lights. So, my name is Jose Ramon Garcia. I'm a filmmaker, photographer. I was once a cameraman for Channel 22 in the early 70s when the news was shot on 16mm film, before video. So I'm an old guy. I came here, my parents came here in my dad came here in 1953. I came here in 54. My father arrived with the clothes on his back and a little suitcase. Within a year, he had saved up enough money to buy us airline tickets, and we came on a midnight flight on a prop airplane from San Juan to LaGuardia. And then a good friend of his drove us from LaGuardia to the Valley. So I grew up in Westfield, Massachusetts. So I've probably been here longer than any of you brothers and sisters that are here, except for our Anglo friends who are here. So anyway, when I graduated high school in 1970, I was the only Puerto Rican in my class. And so I have a lot of empathy for our recent arrivals who, like my father, came with just the clothes on his back. Okay, so, but we prospered here, thank God. I mean, there was a lot of opportunity then. My parents were very hard workers, and they instilled in us a pride in who we are. So we, at that time, people were ashamed to say that they were Puerto Ricans. They would often say, I'm Spanish. And my father and mother said, never say that you're Spanish. You are Puerto Riqueño, okay? Never hide from that, never be ashamed of that. So, when I was a little kid, I was dyslexic. Plus, I really didn't know English very well. So I was in school, and I kept getting these Valentines. It was my first grade. I kept getting these Valentines. And I kept bringing them back up because everyone called me Joey back then. Joey. That was my nickname, Joey. And so I said, Mom, I keep getting these Valentines. They say this other guy's name. She goes, that's Jose. That's your name. So that's my name. She goes, yeah, you're Jose, not Joey. So from that age, from first grade, I said, se acabó, Joey. Joey's gone. Yo soy Jose. Okay? So that's why I've had, maybe that's why I'm here. My two brothers, one older, one younger, did not adopt their Puerto Rican names until they were in college. But I was in first grade, so something in there. So anyway, it wasn't easy, but my parents were just determined, bright people who instilled in us the values of hard work. So my father, I was like 13 years old, and I said to my father, Dad, I'd like a new bicycle. He said, oh, you like a new bicycle, huh? I said, yeah. He said, good. I'll get you a job. So he got me a job washing dishes when I was 13 for 75 cents an hour. And I said, Dad, I'm only 13 years old. He goes, oh yeah? When I was 13, I cut sugar cane all week for $5. And then I would take the $5 to my father at the end of the week, and he would give me $2 back. He goes, I'm gonna give you a better deal. You get to keep all the money, okay? So that's how I came to be here. And I want to give credit to my parents, but then also to my mentor, a wonderful man. Edward Kennedy from Channel 22. I loved him like a father. So anyway, it was the early 70s. My mom was involved in a social group, and my mom said, look, I want you to be our spokesperson. I go, Mom, I don't know anything about this group. She goes, would you please be our spokesperson? So, Mr. Kennedy interviewed me, and immediately after the interview, offered me a job. He said, would you like to work in TV? I said, no, I'm happy the way I am. 6 months later, I said, how stupid am I? I just got offered a job. So I called him up, Mr. Kennedy. He said, Mr. Kennedy, do you remember? He says, sure, come on in, you got a job. And he became my mentor and taught me to see beyond what you see. He said, what do you see? Every day was like training day. And I drove around the streets of Holyoke, Chicopee, Springfield, all over New England. I used to cover the governor's press conference in Boston. But every day was like, what do you see? I said, well, see that? He goes, no, what do you see? And so he taught me to be observant. He taught me how to interview people and not be afraid of anybody. So we interviewed heads of state, senators, President Carter. I did a lot of work for Senator Kennedy. So, it's why I'm a little emotional about Ed. I wouldn't be here without him. So, anyway, fast forward, I started a business with my brother in Westfield. We had a photography studio, and my career has taken me all over the world. Asia, Africa, Central and South America, doing documentaries and doing commercial work, and also volunteer work. I went to Vietnam and scrubbed and went into surgery every day with the American Academy of Plastic Surgeons. So, like the guy says that, baseball been very, very good to me, photography's been very, very good to me, okay? So, with further ado, I'll talk about the film. The film is a true story about a young man who came from a privileged family in Puerto Rico. His father was a lawyer. His brother's a lawyer. His sister's a lawyer. His son is a lawyer. And against all breeding and opportunity, he chooses to be a revolutionary. So, I had read about him, and so through a dear friend, everybody knows that somebody in Puerto Rico. So I called a friend, I go, do you know how to get a hold of this guy? He goes, let me look into it. And within like 3 weeks, I had the guy's cell phone number and his office number. So I called him up and I said, I called, and he's not there. So I called his office number. And then,
He's calling.
maybe he's calling me now. So I get his cell phone number, and I call him, and he says, hi, this is Juan. And I go, oh shit, what do I say now? I don't know this guy. So then I give him my pitch. He said, okay. He says, send me what you got. So I send it to him, and he calls me back. Because I had written a script with a friend of mine, and we went Hollywood. We fictionalized everything. He says, is this what you want to do? He said, I'm not interested. I said, oh boy. I said, I said, don't hang up, don't hang up. I said, what's your favorite restaurant in Old San Juan? He said, well, I said, do you like El Jibarito, or do you like El Café Puerto Rico in Plaza Colón? He said, I think I like Café Puerto Rico in Plaza Colón. I go, I'll see you there in 2 days. So I flew down to Puerto Rico, and we had dinner. And his son, who was a lawyer, interrogated me. You know, I think they thought I was an FBI agent. So they interrogated me, and he said, oh, fine, we'll talk tomorrow morning. So I met him at Starbucks, we had coffee. I said, so can we talk? He said, no, you gotta meet my lawyers. He came from family of lawyers, he was all lawyered up. So we went to see his lawyers, and they said to me, so, do you know who this kid is? I said, yeah, he's a guy who came from a privileged family, and then he did this, he did that. And they go, no. Do you know who this guy is? And I said, you know, apparently I don't know, but you're going to tell me. And they said, this man is a patriot. He sacrificed his life for his country. If you have any ill intentions, we have ways of dealing with you. Then it turns out that one of his lawyers was a former CIA agent in Vietnam. And I go, oh boy, it gets worse, you know. So, with further ado, I'm going to start the film, but I guess the person's coming in. I want her to close this.
Just repeat what you said, because. Yeah.
I'm sorry. This is the only time it's going to be shown anywhere until we premiere the film. This was a preview, it's not a premiere. It's a preview, and that's why all the titles and you see the low-res images, they're low-res because when you do a film like this, it's a lot of heavy lifting for a computer and our editor. So I want to give special thanks to my co-producer, Bester Cram of Northern Light Productions out of Boston, who has been committed to this project, along with my editor, Mike Majoris out of Providence, Rhode Island. Those two guys have been with me throughout this whole project for going on 10 years. We tried different approaches, and then, you know, we just, at one point, like, do we want to keep doing this? And then finally, you know, the film started talking to us, and it found its own voice. And so, you know, I hope you liked it, and then, you know, where there'll be, in the final version, there'll be changes, you know, in some content, but the basic storyline, the backbone of the story is this story. But there'll be, you know, some details here and there that will change. The music, the narrator. We're right now trying to get, and pray for this if you're praying types, we're trying to get Rita Moreno to be the narrator. So right before I came here today, I had a phone call with a dear friend of mine in San Juan who has connections in LA. And so I've been trying to get her to come on board and work with us. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I just have some questions. First of all, where are you planning to premiere this? Into which medium?
Well, we just entered the Sundance Film Festival. And so, you know, if we have any luck, and it's a long shot, but we don't think there'll be anybody else with a film like this at Sundance. So that bodes well for us. But even if we don't get into Sundance, we're going to show it, you know, nationally, internationally. Our intent is to bring it into Latin America, to bring it to Europe, to bring it to Canada, and that's what we plan to do.
Second,
Yeah.
are you concerned that the Americans will use Rita Moreno as an American symbol as opposed to a Puerto Rican symbol? You're not concerned about that?
No. We have a wide diaspora of Puerto Ricanos from different traits of thought. I mean, I have some people who come on board who, you know, I was born in Puerto Rico, but I grew up here. Do I believe in the way Juan conducted his life? No, I don't. But he and I had many questions about it. I said, what the heck were you thinking? You're such a bright, kind, wonderful man. You meet him, he's a real gentleman. But you have to understand in the context of what happened in the late 60s, early 70s, there were movements all around the world. In Italy, there was the Red Brigade. In Germany, there was the Baader Meinhof gang. In the United States, there was the Students for Democratic Society. And there were also the Black Panthers. In fact, when Juan first started, he tried to join the Black Panthers. He had an African-American girlfriend. And he said, look, I'd like to join the movement. She said, you can't. And he said, why not? She goes, you're not black. So she said, go find your own, thing. And so he went and did it. So it was the times we were living in. So you have to take that in context. I'm sorry, yeah?
You have footage in the movie here,
Right.
the documentary here that is recent, where the march and the military response and the police. Is that the most recent response from Puerto Rico on May 1st this year? Is that how recent that is? Como el paro nacional, there was an incident that happened in Puerto Rico this year on May 1st. It was
Yes,
the paro
yes,
nacional.
that's what that's from.
That's where that's from.
That's where that's from.
So I was present during that,
Okay.
and in Puerto Rico I was visiting, and I had always heard about how extensive the militaristic response or presence is in Puerto Rico. I always, I read about it, I heard about it, but I never experienced it the way I did on that day. And I think that here in the United States, the diaspora really doesn't understand how controlled Puerto Rico is by its military and the police there. And I think that should be highlighted more in the documentary if possible. I think you touch upon it, but I think that people don't understand how controlling it is.
But the difficulty thing, when I first started on this project, I pitched it to HBO. And you have to understand how difficult it is to get. There's so many things I'd like to put in this movie. The hardest part is deciding what to leave out, because there's so much information. So when I was talking to HBO, they said to me, you have a mini-series here. I said, well, I can't afford to, film a mini-series. So hopefully someday somebody will take us up on it.
We did our own personal survey while we were there about Carmen Yulín. I wanted to know what the people in the community were feeling about Carmen Yulín. And a lot of them were having feelings against her, opposed to her, because she was not a big supporter of the military or the police force, you see? And so people in Puerto Rico automatically, if you're not aligned with the police force or with the military, that's a big problem, right? And I just feel like that is just one of the reasons why people fear so much the independence movement.
Well, let me give you a little quick history lesson of how Puerto Rico got to be militarized. Early on, you see the guy Blanton Winship. Remember, he was the first governor was Charles Herbert Allen, and he was the one who he had all his information on that back wall. And he's the one who kind of economically raped the country. But then, subsequent to that, Blanton Winship was the Judge Advocate General of the United States. And he, being a military man, he brought in this guy named Colonel Riggs, Eliza Francis Riggs, who was he was a military intelligence officer who was working with Anastasio Somoza in Nicaragua to suppress that population. So then he brought, Blanton Winship brought Riggs to the United States, and they were tasked by President Roosevelt, Franklin Delano, to suppress the independence movement. So the first thing they did was militarize the police. So they had a civilian police force in Puerto Rico, but the first thing is they brought in machine guns and all kinds of military hardware to get the police to control the population. And then they also, you hear Second Amendment here. In Puerto Rico, it's very difficult to have a gun. You can't have that. They restricted gun ownership way, way back in Puerto Rico. So, those things, you have to put all of that in context of the repression. And also COINTELPRO. I don't know if you know about COINTELPRO.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So
So the gun law is different?
you can't. You go to Puerto Rico and try to get a gun.
No, I'm just saying that, for example, over here, they went from 1 to 3 years. So
Right.
it's 3 years over here, the law's tougher over there.
Oh, to get a gun there, you have to have a
Right.
priest, a nun, and
Right.
local con, yeah, to get a gun.
Thank
So,
you.
go ahead.
Yeah.
So first of all, I say thank you. Thank you for doing this. Thank you for me for bringing us one, a machetero to, the only idea of a machetero was salsarengue restaurant, Jose Bo. And that's all for machetero.
Oye, gracias. Lo agradezco mucho, hermano, porque esto es, it's a labor of love. You know, I met Juan, and instantly he's a real gentleman and a dear friend. Well, yo lo considero un hermano. He's my brother, you know. And so he comes here, and if someday, after we premiere the film, maybe I'll bring him to the community. He's very involved. But I'll give you a couple of details that's not in the film. When they had the Wells Fargo money, remember when that trailer flipped over?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. That trailer came from Florence, Massachusetts. It was a lawyer from Florence that he met at Harvard. And right after they stole the money, they went to his office in Springfield and used his van.
What's his name?
I can't say it.
We just wanted to recruit.
You can research it, no, but I'm not gonna do that. Juan said to me, well, he said to me, one thing you should all understand is that early on he said, look, there were many North Americans who were very sympathetic to us, who helped us, logistically, and they shall remain nameless, but there were, he said, we didn't do this on our own. There were many North Americans who supported of our struggle. So, to our North American brothers and sisters, thank you.
So, I guess for me, the next question is kind of a logistical.
Mm-hmm.
One is, how do we put a following behind your movement of the film? Second is how do we continue to see your progress? And third is, what can we do to either monetarily or publicly support what you're doing?
Well, that's a good question, because my co-producer and I have burned through a lot of money.
I'm sure.
Tons of money. And so now we're gonna burn through some more. And we just had a meeting yesterday, and our burn rate is $30,000 a month. That's how much we're gonna burn through. And for the next 4 months, we need $130,000 to bring this to the next level, because as I said before, we have to swamp out all of the low-res stuff, and then we color correct, we fix the audio, we're gonna fix the narration, so that, by January, February of next year, we'll have a premiere. But that's, so if you want to contribute anything, if you know somebody has deep pockets, then we have an LLC. It's called Invisible Island LLC. And you can, don't write a check to me, write it to whatever. But we would like to, we're trying to find somebody who can help us put up a Kickstarter campaign to make this the best film that we can make. We're obviously not going to make any money. We're burning through money like,
Well, coming from the field that you're in,
Right.
I believe that documentaries.
They eat money, they don't make money.
But they give the information to the public and the awareness that we need to have. Is there a website? Do you have media presence? How do we, as ordinary individuals who just saw this, would like to support your efforts? How do we get in contact with you? How do we get in contact with?
Well, Manuel, maybe Manuel can help me with this. We're going to be putting up a website, but we just put the finishing touches on this film last Friday.
Wow.
Okay, so we've been working like little beavers in the pond, and just to get this out, because we had the cutoff date was last Friday for the next round of Sundance. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I just want to say I'm a city councilor here in Holyoke, and I'm the executive director of Nueva Esperanza, but I just want to thank you. I remember graduating from high school in 2005, and I would say that Holyoke teaches me how to be a better Puerto Rican every day, and to learn, even though I'm sitting here, I didn't know the history of the macheteros at all. And I remember graduating in 2005 and seeing that on the news and right, being young and dumb and ignorant and being like, oh wow, they killed a Puerto Rican terrorist. And now sitting here, I was kind of taken aback to think about how like America colonizes us. But I just want to say thank you and thank Juan Falcon and thank Manuel Frau for doing this and for bringing this. I can't wait for the final movie product. I hope to take our young people to it. So I hope you get the funding, but I just want to publicly thank you for the work that you're doing.
It's my pleasure to present.
And the cool part for me was seeing that how you were saying how it was so tough to get to him, but I share a birthday with that guy, and how, you know, hearing even how they tried to kill him on August 30th, like that day kept popping up. That's my birthday. But I want to say thank you for the work that you do. And again, Juan, thank you every year and Manuel. This Grito de Lares event, you know, I was homeless on the street. I didn't know shit about Puerto Rico at all. And like literally 10, 12 years ago in Holyoke, because of this event and because of, you know, Jose Bo, I'm sad he's not here. We consider him our local machetero. But you guys continue to educate me because I didn't even know this history. Like I've always heard about the macheteros, and sadly I didn't know what it really meant. I didn't know the history until today. So thank you. Thank you for your work.
You're welcome, Mike. It's my pleasure.
Muchas gracias, lo mismo, Falcón.
Sí.
Y el domingo viene siendo el 13 años, ¿no? 13 years after Fidel death.
Sí.
And I remember we were involved in a Grito Lares because we try to celebrate in recognition not only of Fidel, but we're talking about the community of art itself. When Oscar Lopez Rivera came out of jail, the Spanish American Library in Springfield College, one of the colleges in the area, we were able to be supportive, and he came down and spoke.
I was there.
When Nelson, you was there?
Yeah.
Okay, because of Nelson, I helped to sponsor that. Nelson here in Holyoke. So I know of one Sega apartment with the Lolita Lebron, and I read some of the history, but I've never actually viewed him or listened to his words.
Right.
So it's pretty encouraging. Now, from the point of view that it's very difficult for someone to understand why a person so gifted, very talented individual, graduated from a well-known college, will convert himself to the things that we do. The interesting is, for me personally, it's not so much about the education, it's about the passion and compassion you have for your own people. And someone actually has to do it, and there's always a pro and a con. But the idea behind, I spent 20 years in the military. So when you're trained, you train for a purpose. I don't think that the purpose is to oppress people. It's to work alongside people. But of course, we have mixed messages along the way.
Sure.
So the bringing, my thought is, if he was ever to, if he can travel.
Right. He comes to station here.
Okay, so that'll be a good opportunity for maybe agencies and, put some money together and maybe do something on a large scale, similar to an Oscar when he came. Because we have to be able to see, listen, and hopefully we have a lot of pros and cons in the Hispanic community. So if I was let's say machetero, there'll be a lot of misunderstandings.
Right.
What they don't recognize sometimes is that somebody has to give of themselves for someone else to be able to survive.
Yeah. Yeah.
I like what he's saying, but I was in the military too, and I was in the Navy, and I saw a lot of stuff, even against people of my race, of Puerto Ricans, Spanish. There's a lot of racism over there, but we were taught when we were so I was in the storm, and I was in Iraq, but I also was in, I didn't go to Afghanistan, but I went to Bosnia, and we saw a lot of stuff over there, and they told us we could never talk about it. If we talk about it, we were gonna get discharged, court-martial, because what Milosevic did to the people was real bad. But a lot of stuff that we saw here is great, and I hope the young kids can see it, because Lolita Lebron, there's a lot of stuff of what happened that day. She shot it in the air. There
Exactly.
was no correlation as people being wounded, and that's what that happened with Don Oscar Lopez, where he came to, when he was, a lot of people say, oh, he's a terrorist. That's why he was even disrespected in the parade in New York City. Many, even stations like Telemundo, I told my wife, Telemundo, Univision, en mi casa no se ve más eso. Because I felt like it was like he was, because people had this idea that they did this terrorism, but they don't know the real situation. And I wish, like they say, when one comes over here, he can explain to tell people what really was and what really happened. Because it's good that these young people know about it, even from us, that, we have it, but also that when they come over here, that the American people understand what is happening in Puerto Rico. Not just what they see in the 1% news, but the real news.
What's your name?
Manny, I'm on West Miami.
Well, I want to say this, that I have advocated to my two, my co-producer and my director, editor, that we put that in, because I know that from what I've read, Doña Lolita emptied her gun into the ceiling.
Mhm.
Because she said, I didn't come here to kill anybody. I came to die for Puerto Rico. Okay? So she was a very religious woman. Most of the shots came out of Rafael Cancel Merianga's gun. But she didn't shoot anybody. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Was there a title? Did I miss it? Is
Yes,
there a
I mean,
title?
at the beginning, it's the last American colony. So anyway, go ahead, I'm sorry.
I think this is a very important piece of work. I think it has a lot of echoes across Latin America on the question of colonialism and the use of violence as a way of getting some freedom and liberty. I think the film makes very clear, it seems to me, that violence has not been as effective as we hoped it would be to liberate our peoples throughout the Americas. And I think the fact that it makes that general point and it ends with a question: what are we prepared to do? What is appropriate for these times in a non-violent way? What can we do for Puerto Rico, for the rest of Latin America, and even for the United States of America, which at this point is in an urgent moment in its history, where we are very close to dictatorship and tyranny? What are we prepared to do in a non-violent way? What can we do? I mean, it raises that fundamental question.
That's what we were here for, to raise questions. That was our purpose.
And so the fact that it raises that question about what might we be able to do, what are we prepared to do, is more than want to do, is really prepared to do. It's a real fundamental question about this moment in the history of Puerto Rico and the world.
And the United States,
Yeah.
if I can put things into context for you, I'm a history buff. So if you look back at why the United States took Puerto Rico. So for those of you who are history, there was a fellow named Alfred Thayer Mahan. He was president of the Naval War College in New London, Connecticut. And he was a big fan of British naval history. And so the Fox News of the day was William Randolph Hearst. And another guy, you'll probably understand his name, was Joseph Pulitzer. These guys were involved in what is known as yellow journalism. And they advocated for the taking of Puerto Rico. The United States was converting from sailing ships to steamships. And Puerto Rico was intended to be a refueling station, or coaling station, to store coal. And Puerto Rico had beautiful ports. Puerto Rico, rich port, you know. And so then also, the United States wanted to project power on both oceans, the Atlantic and the Pacific. So it was the last expansion of U.S. territory. Don't forget that in 1898, the United States also took, the Panama Canal. Because the Isthmus of Panama was not a country. was part of Colombia. So the United States, in one fell swoop, took the Atlantic, the Pacific, and the Panama Canal. And but the guy who they sent to Puerto Rico was a guy named General Nelson Appleton Miles, who came from Westminster, Massachusetts. The reason they sent him was that he was the guy who put all of the Native Americans in the plains on reservations. If you see the movie about Chief Joseph, it was he. So, flush from that success, they sent him to Siboney in Cuba. From there, he went to Puerto Rico on horseback and subdued. So he was an expert at subduing populations. And so when people ask me, what about Puerto Rico? I said, well, Puerto Rico, for all intents and purposes, was the world's largest aircraft carrier. Those of you who know how many bases used to be in Puerto Rico, you know, and after they dropped the bomb, I spend my winters for the last 12 years, I live in Vieques every winter, which is a beautiful, beautiful place. If you ever had a chance, go there and you'll love it. But what was done to Vieques and the Viequensian people was just, you know, horrendous. So, yeah.
And I also think that there has to be outrage, but the problem is that the media, the corporate media will not allow the amount of information that can help the citizens make an informed decision on something. They have this propaganda, they demonize anybody that thinks that does not agree with the system. And I think that what you're doing is very important because you're bringing the consciousness to the people. This is not, what you're being told is not what it is, what it was. And I think that there are many things. For example, I think that, do you know if anybody's auditing the debt of Puerto Rico? Do you know, I'm asking, do you know if anybody is trying to have an auditing of the debt, for example?
Well, you know, Segarra is so smart and so involved. I think El Banco Santander was responsible for a lot of the malfeasance in Puerto Rico. Before, it was triple bonds. That was the idea. And you know who bought most of these bonds? Was the upper class people. People who were ready to retire because they could afford, because it's supposed to pay back triple. So not only did they wipe out the whole country, they wiped out the people who had the most resources, because then they took on. These, I call them vulture capitalists, not venture, vulture capitalists have moved in, and for instance, my cousin is a director of a Centro Médico in Mayagüez, in Arecibo. And when I was down there about 10 years ago, he had a brand new hospital. He was so proud of his brand new hospital. And I went down a few years ago, and he's moving back into the old hospital that he had left. I said, what are you doing? He said, they took away my hospital. They sold it for 10 cents on a dollar. Yeah. 10 cents on a dollar. So these Wall Street people came in, bought this brand new hospital, which was paid for by Puerto Rican funds. They sold it to these vulture capitalists. They held on to it for 3 or 4 years and then sold it at a generous profit. And now the people who are trying to make Puerto Rico pay these inflated costs, they bought this stuff for 10 cents on a dollar, but they want 100%. They want 120%.
That's what they did to Greece.
That's what's happening in Puerto Rico now.
Yeah, and the thing is, it's as far as I know, that debt is illegal. The country should not have, I read, I think it's illegal for a country to have a debt that is over 15% of the GDP. Especially this debt is not debt, it has to do with selling bonds for pennies and then wanted the return 100%.
Exactly.
And you don't hear anything anywhere.
But also during the crash of 2008, there was many of those bankers who were bailed out by the government, who all wanted to Puerto Rico. And none of that money went to Puerto Rico. All the money was with them. So some of that money should have gone to Puerto Rico, and it didn't go.
Anybody, any comments? You know, thank you for coming. And I'll let you know how, if you're interested in supporting our film and helping distribute information about it, I welcome your help and support, because it's not easy, but, you know, this was, for me, was, as I said, the first and only time we're short before we premiered. It's a pleasure to show it to you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Con mi amigo Juan. Gracias.
Yes, antes de despedirnos.
Oh, la foto, la foto.